right, guys, so we got to get into the shells tier list. We're going to be doing some adjusting. Obviously, we have to place the brand new shells that have come into the game, and we're going to be changing slightly the infrastructure of how we're tiering. Now, getting into the tiers, we have our triple S, double S, S, A, B, and then, of course, we have our new bracket, which is just for our new shells coming in. But with the triple S, this is going to be basically our cream of the crop, giving you the highest matrix output, giving you the highest base stat value, giving you some of the better versions or variants of those skills, because keep in mind that there are pets that share the exact same skill, but as you go up in value, they basically will be evolved and giving you a lot more, right? Double S, I think, is going to, now what we're going to be changing, going to be emphasizing some of the mythics that aren't as viable in comparison to some of the ones that are going to be sitting in triple S. So we're going to be shifting down a lot here. With our epics, this is going to be, again, going more into our S rank bracket. Of course, this is still going to be high in value, I would say, for that early game into mid game progression. But once you start hitting in game, you're really going to be looking at double S to triple S. But I would say, for sake of just kind of giving you a visual, anything that is in S tier at the recording of this video and when you're watching this as a brand new player is basically going to be like triple S to you as a brand new player, right? So just kind of, you know, take that for what it's worth. Now, from there, of course, going into our A rank, this is going to be decent early game, you know, shells you might have on for a little bit, might use them for a mission, you're gonna probably take them off. B is just gonna be trash. All right, so let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. Starting out with the very first one here, Codex of Magic. There's no reason to shift. He's S tier, and I'm gonna give you guys a little brief synopsis of the character or of the shell so you know what they do. Codex of Magic is going to be the only shell companion in the game that actually can basically just mitigate you using your skill cooldown on an ability. So you can use your skill 3 twice in a row, you can use your skill 2 twice in a row. It just doesn't care, right? So we're not moving this. Again, base stat value, matrix value is really, really high. Here we have is next Supernova. Supernova is going to be one of those shell companions that I will say can help. It will increase your healing by 35% for 2 turns. And then if the target that is being healed, their HP is below 75%, it will additionally apply a heal over time to them. This could be really, really good on like pure healers like Ling Lao, things of that nature. Are you going to be using this on every healer? Maybe, maybe not. It just really depends on the scenario, but we're going to keep in triple S right now. We did get a rework to Law of Silence. So Law of Silence actually is kind of better now, in my opinion. So what you're actually getting is a unique ability to this specific pet. There is no other variation where it will basically at the start of battle put you in, or that Animus that is equipped to, in a void state. Now, what exactly is void state? Void state will increase your effect res by 60%. You cannot be selected as the main target of an enemy skill, and it will reduce the group damage that you take by an additional 50%. So this was definitely adjusted and made better. So now you take reduced damage to AoE hits, you can't be targeted, and on top of that, your res or your effect res is increased by 60%. And then you also at the after the state ends, at the end of your turn, you will then get an attack increase of 10%. So this is going to be really, really good for those types of like units that you want to isolate and not have being targeted and letting them just kind of work down your opponent. So really, really good. Keeping in triple S. So from there, we also are next going to have Golden Lion. This is another one that's going to be saying in triple S, what you're basically getting every 2 times the owner Animus uses one skill, it increases the owner's final damage by 5% and their effect accuracy by 7%, and it stacks up to 8 times. This is obviously going to be pretty huge because you're getting that final damage increase, and the effect accuracy, I guess, depending on like what you're trying to do, Golden Lion can actually be great for kind of lowering some of the stat values. Really is going to work, I feel like, on units that are able to get either rotated really fast or has an abundance of turn usage. Because keep in mind, the more times that Animus uses their skill, is every 2 times, it basically will build up that stack. So the faster that you can do that, the better that this will be. And this, of course, is the best of the best for that specific skill set. Next, we have Alicorn. Alicorn is going to be, again, a little bit adjusted, but I don't think it changed the value to where Alicorn is trash. It just made it to where Alicorn is not as oppressive. Now, what Alicorn actually does is now, instead of dispelling 3 debuffs, it will actually dispel 2 debuffs and then increase their Animus that they're equipped to's effect res by 25% for every 1 debuff that is dispelled. spelled. So that means that it can go up to 50% and it will last for 2 turns. So that's actually pretty high. Now, the other thing is too, is that again, you're getting the base stats, you're getting the matrices that are accessible. So Alicorn stays. Next we have White Fang. So White Fang, I will say, is going to be another one of those top DPS or damage oriented. And I say it actually leans a little bit more into just pure damage. The Animus itself actually does really good damage. So you get 2 hits of 140% damage, and on a critical hit, you basically will increase the owner Animus's crit damage by 6% up to 10 stacks. And the matrices that you have available on White Fang are all damage oriented. They're really, really good. So White Fang, I think, is another high end value, deserves the triple S slotting here. We have next Gigabyte, who is going to be the best of the best with this specific ability, which is for every 3 actions accumulated by enemy units, increases the owner's turn meter by 35% and can be triggered up to 1 time per turn, right? So it's going to be pretty huge for those that are trying to kind of work against the penalty of like maybe being outsped or out turn manipulated. Gigabyte can be kind of one of those nice kind of coin flips that's kind of working you into getting your turn, even if the opponent is trying to work against you to not get your turn. So really, really nice. Now, next we have up on the list here, Black Moon. Now, this is where we get into some of our like shift oriented like things. Black Moon, I think, is one of the mythics currently that's not offering too much value. You do get the damage, the 100% is 2 hits, 100% and 2500 damage to a target with the highest attack, and then it will extend the duration of non-controlled debuffs inflicted by the owner this turn by 1 turn, and then it will also grant the owner a effect accuracy increase of 50% in the current turn. So that's decent. I don't feel like it's definitely something that a lot of players are going to gravitate towards, because in a lot of cases you're probably going to have enough effect accuracy. I think if you want to run like a unique build, you'll run someone like Black Moon. There's also a lot of characters that can help with extensions. The 1 turn extension is nice. So I will say that for what it's worth, we're going to actually be shifting down Black Moon. I feel like Black Moon is definitely more double S than anything. And even when you're thinking about like the set effects, it's more leaning towards like speed, strive, so swift rush, stride, not really any of the damage oriented. So it is definitely catered more to if you want one of your supports rotating to have something like this, they're landing something, so maybe like a Freya, that's who this would be going on. I don't see a whole bunch of units really taking advantage of something like Black Moon. Next we have Count. Count's gonna be another one, and the reason why is because we actually have a ton of units that are able to enable Life Leech now. Granted, you can go for the damage convert of 10%, which is a nice little extra additive, is basically what you're getting. You also get an increase to your attack of 1200 for 2 turns. So I will say that like Count can be nice in those scenarios. I think a little bit nicher, because again, like you have Freya that has the damage convert, you got Dorothy the Wisher that has the damage convert, you're having units that actually have built-in Life Leech as well. So I would even say like your first unit you get, Leon, has, you know, built-in Life Leech. So it's going to be one of those scenarios where if you need a unit to keep themselves alive or self-sustain, then you'll use a shell slot for something like that. But other than that, you're typically going to be going for maybe something that's going to be giving you more raw damage output. I would say with Count can probably work really well on someone like Born, and not even probably, I did test it on Born. It does help with raising the base stat, because the base attack on Born is like really, really important. So I will say that that's another thing that you're going to get, but we're going to be shifting Count down for right now. Now, one that's going to be staying here obviously is going to be the Lighthouse. I feel like Lighthouse's value is really, really high, even with the adjustment that was made, because this does emphasize and cater to more of those bruiser tank down comps. So it triggers when the main body takes damage greater than 25% of max HP within a turn, healing the main body by 25% max HP and increasing the turn meter progress by 25%. So that was what was actually adjusted or added to it, was to give you more of that meter push. And I feel like that still ends up being really, really good, because typically that's going to be on units that are probably more slower. You know, they might be, you know, emphasizing more of those HP defense values versus like, and maybe even effect res over like some of those speed oriented values in some cases. It just really depends on your turn order. But I will say that paired up with like Bloodbath, you're still going to be getting some insane bulk from that. Now, shifting into our double S, all right? So we got some shift ups we're going to be doing first. And I feel like the very first shift up we're going to be doing here is going to be for Artisan. I think Artisan definitely is a triple S, and mainly because after like doing some more extensive testing, we got some new, Animus coming into the game. Artisan offers a lot of value, increases your defense by 700 for 2 turns, and then applies a shield equal to 440% of your defense. And it's not only to the Animus that it's equipped to, but to the ally with the lowest HP percentage. This is going to be a shell that goes crazy on Tsukiyomi. Easy, right? You got Rahu that's going to be able to take advantage of a shell like this. There's a few other units that really will be able to take advantage of that. And because it's based off of defense, that's really going to help out with those more bulkier tank meta oriented type units. You got Ren as well that also can take advantage of this. So yeah, Artisan I think definitely gives you a lot more value. So yeah, we're going to be shifting him up. Halloween is actually going to be our random cooldown Animus. In terms of like value and usage, I mean, Halloween, I haven't really seen utilized. It's an 80% chance to reduce the cooldown of one random score on cooldown by 1 turn. And that's after you take an action. I mean, it will have its use, but I just haven't seen it be utilized at the forefront over a lot of the other Animus that we're talking about, even after all of this testing and since she's been implemented. I will say it's still going to be a double S in my opinion, but it definitely is one that I could see working in a lot of different scenarios if you need cooldowns. But I would say that there's a lot of characters that just kind of have it built into their kit, or they're, eventually just going to invest into that cooldown, and then you're not really going to need cooldowns unless you just want to expedite it quicker. I mean, it just really all depends on the scenario, I guess. Now, next we have our remainder of our double S. We're actually going to be shifting majority of these down. So just keep in mind that I'll give you guys kind of like a reciprocated or correlated shell that this is relevant to in the mythics, but just know that it's obviously worse than, so it's going to have to shift down, right? So Blizzard is actually the reciprocating shell to Halloween. So it will be, instead of an 80% chance, a 60% chance. And so remember, like I mentioned earlier in the video, when we're talking about units that are, or shells that are in S tier, these are going to be the ones that are kind of like triple S for you when you're in early game, right? Black Flag is going to be being shifted down. There's actually a new shell coming into play that actually does Black Flag's job better. Black Flag, just to kind of give you an idea of what he does, basically will deal damage to the main target that you're going after. It's a follow-up attack to the main target that you hit. And then on top of that, you get a speed up buff for 2 turns. And then it will also give the owner Animus a increase to their turn meter by 16%. All right. So very, very straightforward. So then from there, we have Shen Haijing. Shen Haijing is another one that unfortunately we're going to be shifting down. I really like Shen Haijing, but again, when you're talking about early game, it's going to be great. It's also the worst version of Gigabyte. So for every 3 actions accumulated by enemy units, increases the owner's turn meter by 25%, and it can be triggered up to 1 time per turn. So that's where that shift down is happening. We have Twilight Knight. Okay, so Twilight Knight is still one of those ones that's like, I don't want to shift him down, but I know I have to. Again, there isn't anyone else that technically has this specific gimmick. And I think that actually might be why we might keep Twilight Knight just in front, so people kind of know like the value. So we'll put Twilight Knight like somewhere right here, because Twilight Knight actually is going to be able to deal 200% damage, and it's going to be to the enemy with the lowest HP value, and then it will reduce their defense by an additional 60% in that turn. So that's still going to be pretty crazy, even after you get to the point of like starting to kind of scale. There isn't anyone that's actually offering like any instance damage or defense break, so that's still kind of like borderline double S in my opinion. So yeah, we're going to be keeping them there. We have Crossroads, which is going to be being shift down. That's basically the worst version of Count. So you can see Count here is in double S, so we're going to be shifting down Crossroads, and it's basically the same thing. I think instead of 1200 on the attack, you get 900. We have, I think this is called Diamond Heart. Yes, it is Diamond Heart. So Diamond Heart is actually going to be the worser version of Artisan. And so from here, we're going to actually be placing Diamond Heart here. And Diamond Heart is basically going to be giving you, instead of, I think, 700 defense, it actually will give you 550. And then instead of 440%, it's 360% on the defense scaling off of, for the shield. So that's basically like the difference. Of course, obviously you have the base stat and the matrix bonuses that are accessible. So there is that. But yeah, that's that. Now, lastly here, we have Electro Squid, who we're also going to be shifting down. Electro Squid is going to be our healing efficiency, heal over time variation for the epics. Basically 25% on the extra healing for 20 or for 2 turns, and then when there is the or when that heal target's HP percentage drops below 50%, it will then give you a heal over time for 1 turn. So that's kind of how that works. So we're shifting everything down like I mentioned before, but again, just kind of noting what their correlation is or who they're correlated to, which I felt was really important. And Electro Squid is actually correlated to Supernova, just for anyone that was wondering. All right. So now we got those all placed. They're in S tier. I would say from here, we got to talk about our next rarity, which is going to actually be our uniques. So uniques that are staying. We're going to be keeping Unbridled Science. I think Unbridled Science is, out of all the uniques, might have the highest value. And that's just because he's very straightforward. It is literally after the owner takes action, increases their turn meter by 40%. That is going to be very potent for a lot of content, and you're going to more than likely use that on most of your rotators as you're working your way up. So we're going to keep them at the end of S tier for right now. The very next one that you're going to have here is actually going to be Reason. So Reason is actually going to be able to heal healing by 30% in this turn. And if the heal target has less than 65% HP, it applies 1 turn of heal over time. Now, the thing is that it's not that Reason is bad, right? I think Reason is actually really, really good for that healing output. It's the fact of the investment, right? When you start looking to invest fully into these uniques, they really don't give you a lot of return, right? So you would never take them more than what the hyperlink charter is telling you. You would never awaken them fully. You would only ever take them up high enough to complete the mission, and that's that, right? So we're going to be keeping Reason here for right now. Mermaid Princess, we're also be keeping here as well, because she actually will dispel 3 or purify 3 debuffs, which I think is pretty solid. And actually, you know, now I'm thinking about it, if we're even just saying they're decent, yeah, we'll keep these here. I think, you know, with, trying to think here. Actually, we're going to shift them down. We're going to shift them down. And this is just because I want this to be as cohesive as possible in terms of like the investment portion. That's like the biggest thing, man. Like if like a player goes and they build these and they invest way too much, they're just going to be upset because you can't transfer these, the investment to another pet. So I really want that to stick when people see this. So we're going to shift it down. Now, Budo Panda, oh, real quick, again, just recapping, Mermaid Princess purifies 3 debuffs. Very, very simple. She's still going to be great, though. I don't think that, you know, she's definitely, I would even say over Reason. She's going to work in a lot of scenarios where you need to cleanse, but respectively so, you got Animus that can cleanse, right? Now, Budo Panda, definitely still going to be a high in value for that respective point in the game, where we're talking about someone that's basically able to increase or scale your damage. You have the 2 hits, 30% of damage and 1200 damage. And then on a critical hit, it increases the owner Animus's crit damage by 5% for 6 stacks. You do have the set bonuses for damage kind of start to open up a little bit. You have Harvest, Onslaught, and Swift Rush, I think. But it's definitely not nearly as bad as some of the other alternatives. I definitely will say, if I had to compare it to Twilight Knight, is it as good? Not necessarily, but it is the only one that actually will amplify your crit damage. Because I think even with Twilight Knight doesn't amplify your crit damage. It just deals damage and then gives you a defense break. Budo Panda actually will give you a crit damage increase, which I think is still like pretty invaluable. Now, the very last one here that we have is actually Star. So Star is going to, before the owner takes action, reduce their next skill cooldown by 1 turn and increases the original Animus's turn meter by 10% after acting. So again, I think this should like respectively be able to stay at the tail end of S. I feel like if we get any more like, you know, mythics that come into the game, we'll start to see some of these drop down. I'm still borderline like AS, but we'll keep it in S for right now. because again, I think that's just one of the abilities. Like, are you really going to be going crazy to use that? I'm actually shifting her down. I just don't see a lot of players really needing to use that. So yeah, we're going to be shifting Star down. Nice if you need it, but I don't think it's going to really be something that's emphasized. And you're not going to be at that place where you're collecting uniques long enough for you to really just be investing in all these different uniques, right? So I think that that's also another really important thing to note. Now from here, I think everything else is pretty much mainstay from Agent Lizard. Nothing really, to talk about really. There's nothing spectacular. Healer or Teacher Owl, kind of the same thing. Dynamo Doji is the same thing when we're talking about that overall like investment or value. I think the biggest thing is that you can get like that 10% crit rate, but in like all actuality, you're going to be able to hit like your crit rate threshold pretty quickly as you're progressing. And then you have White Gale. White Gale, I think... White Gale is a little bit interesting because this is the lower rarity version of your debuff extension. But again, when you're talking about the effect accuracy that you get from this is 15%. It's okay. Like, I think it's decent. So I think, yeah, staying here in A is fine. Our Bs are obviously our rares, which are our lowest rarities in the game. And they're no good, right? So you're never going to invest more than anything in those like that you have to, which is like literally nothing. So we'll keep those there, right? So next up, we have our next placements to talk about, right? And these are going to be our brand new shell companions coming into the game. We're gonna actually start out with Amber. So Amber is actually going to be, I feel like this is an interesting pet. I'm just trying to think about how many scenarios I would want to keep this pet on someone. I feel like in the scenarios that it works, it'll be amazing. It's gonna work extremely well on characters like Tiamat, for example, because what Amber actually does, and I'm gonna put this in, for right now, I'm gonna put it in SS. And this is the thing with this type of gimmick. It's also kind of a risk when you're talking about PvP because it still can lead you to get killed, right? I will say to enable certain characters, like, is this a play that you will play into? Maybe. The ice effect that you basically get from this, so basically what this pet does is it makes it to where when the owner Animus is about to die, it halves their current turn meter and then it removes all effects from them. They recover 60% of their max HP and it puts them into one turn of ice state. So while this is active, it increases defense by 200% and grants immunity to turn manipulation or turn pushback, buffs and debuffs. And when the Animus is about to take their turn to act, it removes the ice effect and they recover another 50% of their max HP. So it's a very, very specific Animus. Our players going to figure out a way to make this work, yes. But I feel like that's one of the ones that I'm kind of like our players gonna have this equipped in like most scenarios? Probably not, right? And I think that that's just the reality of it. It's really good, but I think it's really good for very specific scenarios and for very specific units, like for the Tiamat, like kind of manipulation with her bloodshed, her bloodshed stacks. That's something that, you can kind of factor for that. Now, the next one we have here, which I think again is worth mentioning here, is the Jackal Guard. So Jackal Guard is another one that I think is actually quite interesting because what Jackal Guards basically bring into the table is something that actually is scaled from the Black Flag. So what you're getting from Black Flag is basically that 2-turn, I think, speed up. You got a slight turn meter push, and then you had some damage that was being dealt. Well, Jackal Guard actually will deal 240% damage with 4,200 damage also being applied. And then you also get 3 turns of speed up with a 25% meter or a turn meter push. So that ends up being really, really solid. I will say that for what it's worth, that ends up being highly in value. Again, speed up buff is really good. You get the damage from the Animus, which can be applicable to really honestly anything where you need extra hit or kind of security damage to kind of maybe finish up like one of the ads on the side or to go towards the boss. And then that 25% turn meter push is pretty huge, right? So from there, we have next up Revelation. This is one of the ones that I think I'm probably the most excited to really get to the point of having, because Revelations is going to be bringing something completely new into the game. And I'm going to be putting that bad boy right in SS, where Revelations is going to be before the owner takes action. It enables each crit hit dealt by the owner Animus in this turn to deal additional true damage equal to 12% of the target's max HP, and the total damage dealt per hit cannot exceed 180% of Self's attack. Now, this is actually the pet that's going to be answering directly some of that tank down bruiser meta that we were having an issue with in the last beta. It's going to work well in boss scenarios. It's going to work well against some of, like I said, the HP scalers, the units that really are just super tanky. And this is going to work really well with like sets like Momentum, where it's going to be, you know, kind of amplifying the damage based off of debuffs, etc. Right? So there's so much value that you're basically going to be getting from Revelations. It is a true in-game set shell as well, so you won't be seeing it for a really long time, but I think it is really good. Now, lastly, with our very last shell here, we have Fortissimo. Fortissimo's easily a triple S slot, and here's why. Right? What you're basically getting is a pet that's going to be able to work with AI really well with overhealing or excess healing. So basically what this is our first pet that will actually make it to where anytime or each time the owner Animus heals, it stores 35% of the healing and 70% of the excess healing. And before the owner Animus or the owner takes action, if any ally's HP percentage is below 60%, it heals all eligible allies equally using all stored healing. So in some cases, you might have like, say, like a Ling Lao or a Mia or a Sania or a Chiaki, maybe might overheal, right? You might get some heal over time. It's excess healing. This could be equipped to store some of that excess healing and basically allowing you to heal in a more drastic moment where you might actually need healing. Now, again, I think that this works really well in scenarios where, you know, like the AI just will use a skill 3 and you're kind of like basically already like max health, and then it will store that. And then when you actually need it, it will then restore it. So it is a really good play in with the AI of how the game kind of works. I really will say that this pet is going to be also kind of one of those like coin flippers in PvP, because one moment you think you got the fight, but you might have forgotten that they overhealed a turn before. And here you go. Now they're at that 60%. Now they're healing again, right? So I will say with Fortissimo, it's definitely going to be a really interesting pet from all of them to see in PvP, but I will say even in PvE, this pet's going to offer you a ton of value. So that's basically going to be that, guys, with our tiering. Again, I think that the tiering is very linear. There we go. But when we're talking about, you know, the values of what's actually being applied or applicable between the mythics, that's really what's going to be making up our double S to triple S. And even for what it's worth, it seems like they're really emphasizing, and even once you get to the point of being at end game, there's this emphasis on more mythics being added to the game. There's really no other rarities being added to the game, so those will, you know, naturally start to shift down. So that's that with this one, guys. I hope that this was able to help you. Hope you guys are enjoying you know, the wait time, or if you are watching this at the beta, you're enjoying the beta. But that's that, guys. Everyone, make sure you like, subscribe to the channel, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.